We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Chief Opposition Whip.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. In February 2026, a constituent of mine, Mr Austin, aged 98, had his aged care application reviewed by Labor's AI tool. Despite his age and having suffered a life-threatening fall, his application was assessed as low priority. His family wrote to the minister only to receive a generic departmental response. The next day, Mr Austin unfortunately died. Will the government now support the Coalition's bill to provide human oversight of all aged care decisions?
Call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for the question. And firstly, can I extend my condolences to Mr Austin's family. As I said earlier in this week, it stands to any reasonable person's judgment that there's not a single person in this place who wants an older Australian to die while waiting for care. It's why our generational reforms of Australia's aged care system have been and continue to be so important. The Royal Commission looked into older people dying while waiting for care. And as I said earlier, the peak of the aged care crisis in 2018, more than 16,000 older Australians were dying every year waiting for care. And of course, that Aged Care Royal Commission released a report that was mononymously titled Neglect. We, since being elected in 2022, have made the most significant investments in Australia's aged care system ever. We are overhauling the aged care system, whether it's in-home care, residential aged care, from the ground up. And the way that we drive down the numbers, and that we've successfully done so, is to reduce the wait times for older people to receive the care that they need. The latest data shows that we're well on our way to do that. Standard priority cases are waiting on average 3 months less. Medium priority cases are waiting 2 months less. High priority wait times are now just 1 to 2 months. And those assessed as urgent priority, as always, will receive their full funding within a single month. Assessment wait times have been reduced from the worst point, where the people were waiting up to 10 months, and the median wait time for comprehensive assessments is now well under a single month. Next year, the federal government will invest $47 billion.
The Minister will pause. The Chief Opposition Whip on a point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. Just on relevance, and I appreciate the tone of the minister, but the question that Mr Austin's family particularly want to know about is the government's view in relation to the AI assessment tool and whether you will support the Coalition's bill to humanise these decisions.
That wasn't in the question. It was the interpretation of the question. The question was about coalition policy and the legislation the Coalition has introduced. So I'll just draw the minister back to the question regarding opposition policy, and I can understand he's outlined the government's policies, what the government's doing, but there was a part in that question about the opposition's policies.
Let me be very clear, Mr Speaker. There is no artificial intelligence in our aged care assessment system, and it is dishonest for any actor to pretend otherwise. The integrated assessment tool uses qualified human assessors to complete the clinical assessments, and that is then used to apply the aged care rules so that we have a system that is fair for every single Australian. We'll continue to make sure that Australians get the very best care. That's what they deserve, and you guys should have done it when you were in government.
Give the call to the order when the House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Menzies.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese Labor government working to strengthen Australia's world-leading social media laws to protect young Australians from online harm, and what is standing in the way?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Menzies for his important question. Last year, the member for Menzies and I visited the media students at East Doncaster College to talk with them about Australia's incoming social media minimum age. Their questions were thoughtful and nuanced, and we all agreed on the importance of holding—
The Minister will pause. No, we're not having those sorts of interjections, Member for Bowman. You are warned, and the Minister is 20 seconds in. We don't want those sorts of sledges across the chamber. I'm not having those personal attacks. Just asking everyone to just lift up a little bit today. The Minister has the call.
Their questions were thoughtful and nuanced, and we all agreed on the importance of holding social media platforms accountable for the harm they do to these students and their friends. This week, the Albanese government introduced a bill to Parliament to strengthen Australia's world-leading social media minimum age law. The bill has 4 pages of content. It sought to achieve 2 goals. The first goal, to empower Australia's online safety watchdog to compel documents from big tech companies in their investigation into systemic non-compliance with the social media law. The second goal, to double the fine for non-compliance from $49.5 million to $99 million. That's it. 2 changes to strengthen a bipartisan law designed to protect young Australians from the harms of social media. And last night, the Leader of the Opposition and the Coalition broke bipartisanship and sided with social media platforms over Australian parents. Last night, the Coalition sold out Australian kids to some of the richest, most powerful companies in the world, giving them at least 2 more months to sharpen their legal strategy, to get rid of documents and to continue to do the bare minimum to follow Australian law. They did a deal with the Greens political party to send a 4-page bill with 2 simple goals to a 2-month Senate inquiry, a bill that Australian parents implored this parliament not to treat like a political football. Well, the Leader of the Opposition and the Coalition—
Member O'Connor. Minister.
Have treated those parents with utter contempt. Wayne Holsworth is a brave Victorian father whose son Mac died by suicide due to sexual extortion experienced through social media. We all welcomed him to this place on Monday. Here's what Wayne had to say last night after news of the Coalition deal broke. As every day goes by that we don't up the ante on tech giants acting irresponsibly, innocent kids are targeted by sex extortionists, and the kids will become anxious, depressed, have suicidal thoughts and take their lives. This is absolutely pathetic, and I want to meet Angus Taylor and look him in the eye and tell him the actual damage this will cause. His predecessor, Peter Dutton, was a leader with genuine compassion. This bloke has absolutely no compassion at all.
Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Under Labor, aged care wait times have blown out to over a year. More than 200,000 Australians are waiting for care. Today, Labor was defeated in the Senate, which passed the Coalition's bill to put people back in charge of aged care decision-making. Why won't Labor support the Coalition's bill to provide human oversight of all aged care decisions?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I'll make 2 points before I ask the Minister to respond. The first is that the premise of the question is wrong. There is human oversight over all of these processes. And second is that for the party of Robodebt to actually have the hide to come in here and talk about these issues shows extraordinary gumption when we were left with an aged care system that was titled summed up by one word in the Interim Royal Commission established under the former government, and that word was neglect. We have not engaged in neglect. What we have done is to actually have legislation that passed the parliament, asked to be withdrawn.
There is an unparliamentary remark made. I'd like to assist the House for it to be withdrawn. Well, I didn't hear the remark, but if there's been... Yeah, well, I didn't hear the remark because there was constant interjecting, but if the member for Goldstein has made an unparliamentary remark, I'm just going to ask him to assist the House to withdraw and we'll move on.
The House, fine. Withdraw. Sorry, withdraw, fine.
I thank the member for Goldstein. Order. The member for Core will leave the chamber under 94A. When someone is withdrawing and to assist in the House under the direction of the Speaker, I want all members, no, on both sides, I want all members to remain silent to show the respect to the member who's doing the thing that I've asked them to do. Now the House has come to order. We'll hear from the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And the final point that I will make is that the aged care legislation that passed this parliament in the last term, which was the most significant reform of aged care this century by a long way, passed, to give credit where credit's due, with the initiative of the government, but with the support of the Peter Dutton-led opposition at that time. That was a good thing. And as a result of that, you have seen these changes flowing through from a period that was, frankly, in a state of collapse.
I'll invite the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors to add to the answer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Let me be clear. Assessments are always conducted by qualified human assessors with clinical input documented from start to finish. And this is about delivering a system that is efficient, accurate and fair, so that no matter where in Australia someone lives or who does their assessment, they are treated equitably. Now, being a responsible steward of this system, upon which so many older people rely, means approaching changes in a careful and considered way. The government has been clear. It shares the intent of the private senator's bill, but we're concerned that in practice it would lead to inconsistent and subjective decisions and increased wait times for older people. This morning, I announced the government will itself, through legislation, establish a new legislated escalation option so outcomes of the aged care integrated assessment tool can be changed in extenuating circumstances. This means that in the small number of cases where a person's complex circumstances are not fully captured by the tool, under this new pathway, their assessment can be escalated to the Secretary of the Department and adjusted if necessary so they get appropriate care. Now, we'll take the parliamentary break to consider what specific form this pathway might take. We'll consult with older people and the sector, and we will, if people are willing, work across the parliament to get the best outcomes for older people.
Order. I'll give the call to the member for Petrie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What has been the impact of the Albanese Labor government's world-leading social media ban for under 16-year-olds? And what is standing in the way of strengthening them so that we can better protect Australian children and back Australian parents?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Petrie for her question and for her passionate support of young people in her electorate there based around the Redcliffe region, but also backing of parents who have welcomed this legislation, who, as a result of the reforms that we have put in place, conversations are taking place in schools, in parent groups, between families as well, but most importantly, between mums and dads and their children, being able to talk about these issues to make a substantial difference. We know that together we took action. We answered the call from the parents of young Australians who had taken their own lives. This was something that didn't arise from parliamentarians. It arose from people who had the courage to take what was personal tragedy and channel that into making a difference for others. And Wayne Holdsworth, to respond to an interjection from those opposite during the minister's comments, is absolutely a hero. Absolutely a hero. And he was here on Monday to support the change in this legislation, along with the Let Them Be Kids campaign and the 36 Hours campaign. They have responded as well, as the government has, to the call from the E-Safety Commissioner to be able to have the powers to actually get documentation from these big global giants that are exploiting young people, that are motivated primarily by their profits rather than by—
No. Order. The Prime Minister is going to pause for one moment. Member for Cook, we're not going to have that behaviour with people just yelling out non-stop during an answer. So I'm just going to ask you to leave the chamber under 94A and ask all members to just reflect on their behaviour today. The member for Lingiari is warned. Asking everyone just to show some restraint today. Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The E-Safety Commissioner has asked for the powers to be able to get documents from these big companies and also to increase the fines. That is what this simple legislation that was passed by the House of Representatives, with the support overwhelmingly across this chamber, will do. It's 4 pages long. It's really simple. But the Coalition doing a deal in the Senate to kick this off to an inquiry for months. The practical result of that is we are giving notice to these social media companies to clear out your documents, to clear out the evidence, to make sure that you can resist these changes. Now, Peter Dutton supported these laws, and the Leader of the Opposition can instruct his people, or some of them might stick to it, over in the Senate, to vote for this legislation today before Parliament arises, because if not, there are real-world consequences of this.
The member for Riverina on a point of order.
A point of order and on indulgence, and I just didn't want to interrupt the Prime Minister, but I don't think anybody from the Coalition was questioning Wayne Holdsworth. They weren't. They weren't. I think it was the Minister, to be honest, Prime Minister. I think it was the—
Okay. All right. Resume your seat. Yeah. Order. Just going to follow the standing orders, and we're not going to have— This is the meeting of the Federal Parliament. We're going to follow the standing orders. Everyone. Okay. Before I call the member for Kooyong, I just want to do a couple of acknowledgements. I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today are students from Barker College who are visiting as part of the work experience trip as guests of the member for Berowra. And I'm also going to acknowledge someone today. Whilst they're not here, they are watching us online at the moment, and that's Mr Stephen Smith, a long-standing and highly respected Comcar driver based in Melbourne. He will retire on the 10th of July next week after an extraordinary 44 years of dedicated service. We all know he's online watching. Comcars play an important role. I just want to make this quick statement to the House. Comcar drivers play a vital and valued role in supporting the work of Parliament. They ensure that members and senators can carry out their duties safely, efficiently and reliably, often working behind the scenes but always contributing to the smooth functioning of our democratic processes. Their professionalism, discretion and commitment are greatly appreciated by all of those who serve in this place. Mr Smith in particular will be a familiar face to many present in the chamber. For more than 4 decades, he has provided exemplary service to countless members. Mr Smith has asked me that I convey this message to all members today, and his words, that it's been an honour of a lifetime to serve members of Parliament for so many years. So on behalf of the House, I thank Mr Smith for his remarkable contribution to the Parliament, to the nation and democracy, and I give a shout-out to all Comcar drivers. Give the call to the member for Kooyong.
Thank you very much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. It was reported today that the Australian Tertiary Education Commission won't advise on the reasonable cost of degrees until mid-2027 at the earliest, which means that the Job Ready Graduate Scheme will continue at least until 2028. 285,000 students will next year pay more than $54,000 for arts, law and commerce degrees, $90,000 for double degrees. How can you justify this when you've acknowledged on many occasions that job-ready graduates isn't working?
Give a call to the Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Kooyong for her question and for her passion in this area of higher education. Like me, like I think all members of parliament, you understand the power of education to change lives. And the truth is that we've got a good education system in Australia, but it can be better and it can be fairer, and that's what the reforms that we're implementing across early education, across school education and across higher education are all about. And particularly in higher education, we're driven by the recommendations of the Universities Accord. We've now implemented 36 of the 47 recommendations in the Accord in full or in part, and we'll continue to work through that report. And as you rightly point out, that makes recommendations about the job-ready graduate scheme. I have said it's failed. I've said work on fixing it is unfinished business, and I have said, and you will know, that the Australian Tertiary Education Commission has also pointed out the work they're doing on the cost of teaching and learning that they will finalise next year. Now, they are the facts. What is also a fact is that no government has done more to cut student debt than this government and this Prime Minister. We have cut student debt by 20% for 3 million Australians, and by doing that taken $16 billion off the backs of young Australians. Something, by the way, that the Liberal Party described as profoundly unfair. Well, you said it was vote buying, did you? Yeah, they still don't get it. They still don't get it, but it sort of explains why they are over there and we're over here. The other point I'd make, is it's not the only thing we are doing to make our education system better and fairer, because there's also legislation in the parliament at the moment to invest an extra $3.5 billion into our system to help more kids get a crack at going to university, and in particular help more kids from poor families and from the bush and from the regions to get a crack at going to university, something that the Liberal Party has just said they think is quote-unquote socialism. Well, I actually think it's fairness.
Order.
And I hope that my friends in the National Party, whose kids in their communities will agree, and do what they always do when they think the Liberal Party gets it wrong, and that is roll them and vote for legislation that will help kids from the bush.
Call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. Can the Minister update the House on the operation in Weipa, and what other approaches to border security are there?
Call to the Leader of the House and the...
Thanks very much, Speaker. And I thank the member for Leichhardt, and I want to acknowledge the strong role that the member for Leichhardt has had in combating foreign fishing, and in particular in calling for the work of Border Force that's up there now in Operation Broadstaff. It's made an extraordinary impact, and some of those people who were trying to steal fish stocks from the locals up there in Leichhardt have discovered fairly suddenly that their vessels have been burnt, and have also discovered that those waters are there for the locals and not for those who are wanting to come from elsewhere. Some of those would have seen some comments from the opposition this morning. And let me start with this. Anyone who saw last night on the news that a number of people had tried to enter our country without a visa should know that by the time they woke up this morning, every single one of them had been removed from Australia. Every single one.
Order.
Now, that simple fact did not stop members of those opposite claiming that the opposite was true. But the simple fact is every single one of those individuals who tried to enter Australia without a visa had been removed by morning, and those who had tried to assist them have been arrested. You know, there are two things. There are two things that the opposition right now is wanting to deliver for people smugglers that people smugglers would be tremendously grateful for. People smugglers want there to be footage of Australian voices claiming that people smuggling will work, and those opposite are providing it. And the second thing that people smugglers want is access to information. They want access to information about operations and surveillance, which is why I was surprised that only this week in the Senate all three right-wing parties voted with the Greens to make sure that surveillance information would be made available to people smugglers. All three of them voted. For a long time it has been accepted that any information about surveillance contracts, any information about operations with Operation Sovereign Borders, that there were good national security reasons for that not being made public. That when different occasions have occurred and briefings have been sought in private, that has occurred. But instead, under this Leader of the Opposition, he thinks it's okay for the information that the people smugglers want to be made public and handed over directly to them. He's the friend they wanted that previous opposition leaders haven't been.
Give a call to the... When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. Over recent weeks, shots have been fired at an Australian Border Force vessel from an illegal boat. We've seen the biggest seizure of cocaine in Australia's history, with police believing the drugs were imported by sea. And we've had 12 more illegal arrivals in far north Queensland who managed to have a frothy at the pub before authorities detained them. Why is the Albanese government so weak in protecting Australia's borders?
Call to the Leader of the House. Order. The member will resume his seat. He has asked his question. The member was heard in silence, and now we're going to wait for the House to come to order as I waited so that we'll hear from the Leader of the House.
I am proud of our authorities when they intercept drugs. Those opposite see a drug interception as a problem for our authorities. Every time drugs are intercepted by Border Force or the Australian Police, we have pride in the people who wear that uniform, and we stand with them. When Border Force intercept, you get a sense.
Member for Barker
you get a sense of the level of aggression in that question. The level of aggression from those who want to harm our borders and those who want to harm our country. And I am proud of Australian Border Force and Operation Sovereign Borders that even when people come with those sorts of weapons, we make sure that they are not successful. We make sure that their operations are not successful. There is something that I will pay credit to the previous government for. For the previous government I will pay credit for, because it's something that's continued. It has been more than a decade since there has been a successful people smuggling operation. More than a decade. And we give that message because it's true, and that's the message that people smugglers don't want to hear. But this character, this Leader of the Opposition, the guy who wants to bring all three right-wing parties together.
Order. The manager on a point of order.
I know that the Minister for Home Affairs has exercised. It goes to correct titles, Speaker. And
all right, resume your seat. I want to agree. I want to agree with the manager. He's made this point, and I 100% agree with him. I want everyone addressed by their correct titles, not any other terms. So I'm just going to ask the Minister.
At 2:30 on the 2nd of July, he's the Leader of the Opposition, and I refer to him as the Leader of the Opposition. But let me say, the Leader of the Opposition, I noticed they took issue with the title but not issue with the accusation. No issue with the accusation at all, because he is giving the messages. He is giving the messages that people smugglers want.
Order. The Minister for Climate Change, the Minister for Infrastructure, the manager on a further point of order.
It goes to relevance this time, Speaker. There was nothing about the opposition in this question. It was about them drinking frothies before they're arrested.
Okay, that term wasn't in the question, but order. Order. Mr. Scott, just over 1 minute remaining. Yes, the call.
So you go through all three examples they gave. One, drug interception, successful, good. Second, Border Force intercepting and following on, even in the face of gunfire. Even in the face of gunfire. And instead of standing with those Australian officials, you want to mock them. And thirdly, what happened in Weipa, clearly a question they wrote before they realised every one of those individuals had been removed from Australia. If you want to show that you care about the borders, stop providing the information for people smugglers. I never thought. And a hint on border protection. If the key question for the Leader of the Opposition is, do you get your senators to vote with the Greens? Warning. Warning in terms of where that leads. I understand on border protection. I understand on border protection that those opposite. I will never understand, though. I will never understand wanting people smugglers to have access to surveillance information.
Order. The House comes to order. We're going to hear from the member for Gellibrand.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, my question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to ease pressure on Australians and to help first home buyers into housing? How does that compare with other approaches?
Good question.
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I acknowledge the member for Gellibrand and thank him especially for his work on Asian capability and the big report that he's just released as the chair of the Education Committee. Mr Speaker, today is obviously a very important day. It's the 10th anniversary of your election, as I understand it, the class of 2016, but also the last day of the budget session of the parliament. Now, we have spent every day of this session delivering cost of living relief and delivering real change for Australians. We know, despite welcome progress in the Middle East and lower prices for oil, lower inflation and unemployment in the most recent data, we know that Australians are still under pressure. They have legitimate concerns about where they fit at a time of accelerating change and intensifying global and generational pressures. We don't just acknowledge those challenges, Mr Speaker, we are addressing them. And that's why we are delivering more tax cuts for Australian workers, more pay rises for people on awards and the minimum wage, a fairer tax system for first home buyers. It's why we're delivering more help with the cost of fuel, more paid parental leave for mums and dads. It's why we're delivering super on payday, a permanent instant asset write-off for small business. It's why we're delivering our ban on excessive pricing at the supermarket. It's why we're delivering smaller deficits and less debt than the trajectory that we inherited from those opposite. It's why we're delivering the lowest average unemployment of any government in this country in half a century, Mr Speaker. It's why we have delivered and are delivering an ambitious budget defined by reform and resilience and responsible economic management, Mr Speaker. We've been delivering for the Australian people while the member for Hume has been destroying the Liberal Party. Mr Speaker, we've been delivering for Australians. He's been destroying the once great Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. And there's a very simple reason for this. The three right-wing parties in this country, they seek to capitalise on the real pressures that people are facing while they vote to make those challenges worse, not better, Mr Speaker. All three right-wing parties share this divisive, anti-worker, anti-housing agenda, and you can see that in the way that they vote, Mr Speaker. So as those opposite leave the House at the end of this budget session, they should reflect on why the Liberal Party is circling the drain on the member for Hume's watch. It's because every time the Australian people need them to vote to help them with these real pressures that they face, they vote to make things worse rather than better, Mr Speaker. They leave this parliament today more divisive and more divided than ever. We leave this parliament today delivering for the Australians who sent us here.
Call to the honourable member for Parkes.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Twice in this parliament, the Prime Minister has been directly asked to guarantee housing prices will not tank. Twice he refused. The Prime Minister keeps claiming his budget is helping first home buyers. Can he tell the House whether the number of first home buyers has actually increased since the budget and by how many?
Order. Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I'm asked about house prices and I'm asked about first home buyers, and I'd really thank you for the question. When it comes to house prices, the Shadow Minister for Housing has made some comments about this. He has said this on just the 1st of July. I think these are blips and bumps. He went on the day before, in case you think there was an accident, in other markets, speaking about Sydney and Melbourne, I note there is still price growth. Then he says there may be some short-term hiccups as a result of interest rates and the like. And in case you were wondering whether that was an accident, he said this way back in May. I can tell you as Shadow Housing Minister, I think house prices are too high. Now, when the Shadow Minister for Housing says that, who's been appointed to be the housing spokesperson for the Liberal Party and the National Party, then one would assume that that is all of their position. I assume that has been through the Shadow Cabinet and that is their position.
Order. I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Goes to relevant, Speaker. The Prime Minister has been speaking now for 1 minute and 20 seconds, and all he's spoken about is the opposition. Apologies, I'll just the interjection. You're right. 1 minute 11 seconds. He has spoken about the opposition. He wasn't asked about the opposition. He was asked about twice being asked about negative equity.
Resume your seat. Yes, the Prime Minister was asked that question. He was reading a comment from the Shadow Housing Minister about housing prices to reinforce his point about the topic. He was co-leader of the opposition. We don't need your assistance at this juncture. So the Prime Minister's using that. Well, I haven't finished what I was going to say, but okay, just everyone, it's okay, I can see what's happening. If the Prime Minister is going to use any quote from industry, from the Parliament, from a Shadow Minister or from a Minister, he's got to make sure it's directly relevant. And I have rulings here about previous speakers allowing comments to be made. He can't talk about opposition policy. He wasn't talking about opposition policy. He was talking about the government's policy and what the Shadow's response was. And that is within the standing orders, and there are examples where that happens. So just make sure, if the Prime Minister is using a quote, he's got to be directly relevant to the question. All right.
And I'm
all right. We'll
absolutely allowed to. Yeah. So
order. No, we're going to do this. Order. We're going to do this properly. Where the all managers of opposition business have been entitled to raise subsequent points of order and to speak on points of order. That has been consistent when the Leader of the House was in that role. We're going to give the manager his due respect as well.
Thanks, Speaker. And I just refer to a quote from Speaker Smith, and I know that you and the House respect Speaker Smith, and you've followed on many of the traditions. In doing that, he needs to address the question that was asked, not just deal with the material that is on this policy topic. And I just want to add that part, for it's very important.
I agree with the point you made, and the Leader of the House might want to give his point as well, and I'll allow him to do so.
Mr Speaker, I won't, simply for the reason that the procedure is meant to be the points of order are raised, and once you've given a ruling, that's it.
Yeah.
And we've got a practice now that you're giving the ruling and then it's effectively being contested, which is contrary to standing orders. And once a ruling's given, I get that a point of order will be asked beforehand, but this business of getting up 2 or 3 times is not what's ordinarily happened.
Yeah. Order. No. That's okay. Member should not recontest points of order. So the Leader of the House is correct. So I was in the middle of answering his point of order, and he wanted to jump up again when I was finishing my answer. So maybe I finish my answer before jumping up in future. Yeah. Member for McEwen, just order. I don't know. We're just going to remain silent in that corner of the parliament for a little while. The Prime Minister is able to use a quote. He's got to be directly relevant to the policy he was asked about, not about. He wasn't quoting opposition policy, so he's within order. Does the Prime Minister wish? Does the Prime Minister wish to continue his answer?
What the question was now. It's hard to remember what the question was, Mr. Speaker. I've got to say.
No, it was in your seat.
But I do know that the manager there has got his noggin on TV a few times, so congratulations. Well done. Well done. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
I do find it astonishing. The question about housing, when quoting what the Shadow Minister for Housing has said yesterday, the day before and the month before, that they object to that. They object to that. But that says it all about the chaotic rabble that are opposite. I'm asked about first home buyers buying homes, Mr Speaker. Well, can I say that the member for Robertson's constituent, Gina, emailed him just today for being brave enough to try to thanking him for being brave enough to try and fix the property market to make it a fairer system. I have 2 grown-up children trying desperately to get into the property market to just be outbid by investors. So much so they have all but given up. We have noticed a drop in investors bidding of recent. Hopefully now all our young people may have a better chance of purchasing their first home. In the electorate of Tangney, according to the agents, Von Mikulich, a family bought a home, 4-bedroom home. They'd been renting. They were looking to have more kids and needed a yard and finally got into their first home. In Tweed Heads, in the electorate of Richmond, according to real estate agent, they were a nice local young family moving for a unit into their first home.
Order.
Right around Australia, this is what is happening and this is what will continue to happen.
The call to the honourable member for Cunningham.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to strengthen paid parental leave, and how is it supporting families? What are the risks to this?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and thanks so much to the member for Cunningham. I know that she is out and about in her electorate all the time, and she knows that over 1,800 parents benefited from paid parental leave in her electorate just last year. Mr Speaker, last week I met baby Zoe and her mum and dad, and baby Zoe is number 3 in a family of 3. And what Zoe's mum Anne told me is that each time she got paid parental leave, she got more time off and more money. The last 2 times because of the big changes that we have made since coming to government in 2022. And you know, if Anne and Dad Chris decide to have number 4, they will get more time off, the full 6 months. They'll get more money at the higher rate of over $1,000 a week now. They'll get more flexibility, more time to take off together if they wish. And of course, they are also part of the larger group of people that are eligible now because we've increased thresholds. Thanks to our changes, families now get around $30,000 of paid parental leave. That's more than double what it was when we came to government. But it's not just about paid parental leave. We've also increased family tax benefit. For example, a family with 1 kid over the age of 13 about $1,500 better off in a year since we came to government. And families are benefiting from higher wages, from lower taxes, from 3 hours of free power, from a stronger Medicare system. And of course, we're helping families get into a home of their own as well. But none of this is safe if those opposite have their way. The Liberals have never supported paid parental leave. One Nation hates it. Senator Hanson said in 2017 that women just get pregnant for the money. She said in April, she said, "Listen, love, you have the equipment. That's what you're here for. If you don't want to interrupt your career, don't have a baby." And at the press club recently, she said, "The gender pay gap's all smoke and mirrors. Women take time off and they're not paid their wages because they're not working." Fair enough, she said. But this is typical. One Nation pretend they're for working families, but they're not. They're for lower wages. They say that workers are lazy, they should be easier to sack and they're paid too much. Fits right in with the Liberal Party, who say that low wages are a deliberate design feature of their economic architecture. Mr Speaker, on this side we know what we're for. We are for higher wages, we are for lower taxes, we are for stronger paid parental leave, we are for a stronger Medicare system, we're for free TAFE and lower university costs. We are for working families. Those opposite are all whinge and all pretence.
Talk to the honourable member for Cowper.
To the Prime Minister. I refer to another mean-spirited act by the Prime Minister to cut the private health insurance rebate for Australians aged over 65. The CEO of National Seniors Australia, Chris Grice, has said, and I quote, "The cuts could push people to downgrade their cover, potentially leaving them underinsured when they need it most. At the same time, this will add pressure to an already stressed public hospital system." Prime Minister, how many older Australians will be worse off under this broken promise?
Call to the Minister for Health, the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the member for his question, which is a question I've answered before in this place since the budget. As I've said on a number of occasions publicly and in this chamber, the additional support that over 65s have received since about 2004 for their private health insurance premium is something we did revisit, given the significant pressure on our aged care system and the need to find additional funding to deal with the demand that has been the subject of some discussion in this parliament over the course of this week. Let's be clear. The additional premium on the rebate has meant that households next to each other on the same income, on exactly the same income, have been receiving a different level of support for their private health insurance based solely
the Minister
on
will pause.
their
The member
age.
for Cowper, there are consequences for actions. You've asked your question. You were heard in silence. I made sure the House heard your question. I want to hear the Minister's answer as well. We showed you respect. I'm asking the Minister to be showed respect. Two-way street. Minister, in continuation.
Thank you, Speaker. And at a time, as I said, when we need to lean so heavily into the need to find additional capacity in the aged care system, that was not a use of taxpayer funds that we felt we were able to continue. Now, to the question that I was asked or referred to by the Prime Minister, our modelling indicates that this will lead to a change of about 44,000 people in the health insurance system, or about, I think, 0.4% of the health insurance membership. set that against the fact that health insurance membership has been climbing by 2% per year on a very consistent basis over the last several years. Health insurance will continue to grow.
Order. When the House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Macon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence Industry. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering the largest reforms to defence in over 50 years? Why is this important for protecting our national interests and keeping us safe?
Give the call to the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs, the Minister for Defence Industry.
State of South Australia for his question. Since 2022, the Albanese government has undertaken the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history. We're making this investment because the strategic circumstances we face demand it, and because we're committed to ensuring that the men and women of the ADF have the capability they need to protect our national interests and keep us safe. We're also doing this because investing in our defence, building our self-reliance and defence industry represents the progressive patriotism that is at the heart of the Albanese Labor government. But with this record investment comes a responsibility to ensure that every dollar delivers value for money for taxpayers. That means ensuring that defence has the structures, the focus and resources to deliver the right capability projects on time, on scope and on budget. And that's why we're undertaking the biggest reforms to the Department of Defence in 50 years. Because the truth is, Mr Speaker, the system is not fit for purpose, and it hasn't been for well over a decade. One project that occurred under the Liberals when they were in government involved Navy setting requirements that breached the laws of physics, Defence then asking the defence industry to breach the laws of physics, and then a defence company contractually agreed to breach the laws of physics. And then, surprise, surprise, a few years down the track, no one could agree on what had gone wrong. Well, the good news is, Speaker, we fixed it, but it's a symptom of a system that is broken. We've got committees that are meeting for hours on end without actually making any decisions. So things have to change because these projects matter. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar capability projects integral to the defence of our nation and to peace and stability in our region. Speaker, let me be crystal clear. This is not the fault of the highly skilled and experienced public servants in the department. Defence personnel are some of the hardest working, smartest, most committed in the game, but the systems were broken. A catastrophic mistake was made under those in 2014 when they abolished the project management organisation and outsourced it to the private sector. At the same time, they cut the defence budget by $20 billion, continuing the tradition that began under Menzies. The truth is, they're big on rhetoric, Speaker, but weak on action. Through our reforms, we're making sure that defence is developing the capability projects we need. We're setting them up for success, and we can respond more effectively to the emerging threats to support Australia's national interest. That's why you can only trust Labor when it comes to defending our nation.
The call to the member for McKellar.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. More than 400 Australians die by suicide linked to gambling every year. That's more than 1,000 lives lost since the Murphy report was handed down. The government has ignored key recommendations from the Murphy Gambling Inquiry, including establishing a national regulator and ending gambling inducements and advertising. Prime Minister, why has the government chosen to protect the profits of gambling media and sporting companies instead of implementing all the inquiry's recommendations in order to save the lives of Australians?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks. I thank the member for McKellar for her question. And the legislation that was introduced into the parliament today follows on from the previous work that my government has done. More work than has been done by any government to crack down on gambling since Federation. And this legislation will make an enormous difference. It restricts advertising of gambling. It makes sure that people can opt out of receiving gambling. It addresses online issues of gambling advertising as well. It addresses the issue of overseas and international companies and makes sure that they can be excluded. It addresses also issues that have never been addressed, such as, I forget what the member for Mackellar or the member for Warringah, to give Manly Warringah home turf. The ground there at Brookvale Oval, as I call it, was of course sponsored by a gambling company, so that when every time there's a game on there and every time around the ground, you see that constant advertising as well. What our legislation will do is to make sure that future contracts can't be entered issue over things such as advertising on jerseys, advertising on grounds. We have sat down as well and we have worked constructively with the anti-gambling sector. We've worked constructively as well with the commercial broadcasters. We've worked constructively with sporting organisations as well to make sure that we can minimise harms, to make sure that reforms are practical. That's what governments have to do, is to receive appropriate advice. This is good reform. This is a major step forward, and the parliament should vote for it. If they don't, then you do have the option of the status quo. You do have that option. But what we will do is we have taken the strongest possible action that any government has taken in history.
The Minister for Employment and the Minister for Infrastructure will not be interjecting any more during question time. The call to the honourable member for Braddon.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering a stronger Medicare for all Australians after a decade of cuts and neglect? Are there other approaches to the trusted Medicare brand?
Give a call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Braddon, part of the mighty Tasmanian Labor team, Mr Speaker. A bit like South Australia, Tasmania is a little older than the national average, with a higher rate of most chronic diseases, and that makes a stronger Medicare there even more important. And the member for Braddon and her colleagues never miss an opportunity to talk up the interests of their beautiful state when it comes to health, Mr Speaker. And this government is delivering. Yesterday, Tasmania's hard-working public hospitals were finally freed of the shackles of the substandard Morrison-era hospitals agreement, Mr Speaker. Under that deal, their funding would have been capped at just $750 million this year, but under ours they'll receive an increase of more than 20%, or an additional $160 million in this year alone, which means more doctors, more nurses and better care in Tasmania, Mr Speaker. And we're also taking pressure off those hospitals with urgent care clinics in Burnie, in Devonport, in other parts of Tasmania, and a revival of bulk billing, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to report to the member for Braddon that bulk billing in her electorate is up 12% because of our investments and now sits over 93%. For pensioners, it's over 97%. For people without a concession card, it's increased by a whopping 25% because of our investments, Mr Speaker. The sort of real change you get from hard-working Labor members like the member for Braddon, Mr Speaker. But now, earlier today, we were all in here voting on the latest instalment in the member for Lindsay's ongoing but thus far unsuccessful campaign to rebrand the Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. Even while we were reading about the opposition's leaders giving his party room a tongue-lashing about rebranding, the member for Lindsay was moving a motion promoting the Liberal Party as the party of Medicare, Mr Speaker. The Liberal Party as the party of bulk billing, Mr Speaker. And I say to the member for Lindsay, in broad terms, good luck. In broad terms, strength to your arm, but the Australian people know what the Liberal Party has always thought about Medicare. They remember John Howard describing Medicare as the Hawke government's greatest failure. They remember John Howard describing bulk billing as an absolute rule. They remember Tony Abbott trying to abolish bulk billing altogether, Mr Speaker, and they lived through that infamous decade of cuts and neglect, Mr Speaker. Australians know if they're interested in Medicare, the Labor Party is the party to deliver the real change and a healthier Australia.
Call to the honourable member for Forrest.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and my question is to the Prime Minister. Aussie legend Joseph Dowd spent $17,500 of his own money on billboards telling the Labor government to drop their ambition taxes. He's paid up again, winning an auctioned tennis match at the Lodge to get the Prime Minister's attention. The Prime Minister told the Australian people before the election that his word was his bond. So when Joseph gets to the Lodge, will the Prime Minister tell him why his word on negative gearing and capital gains taxes was broken, or will Joseph be served up another Labor tax hike?
Look, that question was barely within the standing orders. It was about order. So, yeah, that was a very, very, very broad question about the responsibilities of the Prime Minister. So I'm going to be clear with everyone. I think we're going to get a very broad answer. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, the first thing I'd say is congratulations to the Press Gallery Board, to Jane Norman and her team in raising money for charity last night. The second thing is, if I was someone on that side, led by this Leader of the Opposition, I wouldn't be mentioning last night. I would pretend it was all a bad dream. Because
order.
Stop digging.
Because, Mr Speaker, I'm sure you were there and many were here, and we're not supposed to talk about it, in spite of the fact you just came in and asked a question about it. The geniuses in the Tactics Committee. You know, there's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of chatter about the member for Canning, but who's insisting he's running again, and good luck to you. And certainly, if it's you or One Nation, I'm for this bloke. Let me tell you, that's where I come from, and good on you for standing up to them. But I suspect there's another bloke having a go over here. The bloke who stands up whenever a question's asked and moves 2 or 3 points of order, make sure his KPI is reached of getting on the TV 10 times every day, because why would you ask that question, Mr Speaker? Why would you ask that question? Because I'll make this point. When it comes to this gentleman, and I don't know who he is, obviously, the Leader of the Opposition mentioned him in his speech, and he's obviously a mate, and they think it's very clever to do all this. And I'm quite happy that more money is going to charity. I make that point. But let me make this point as well. If it's a choice between someone who's in the sector somewhere and who's got enough money to buy billboards and spend all this, or first home buyers struggling to get into a home, I'm for the first home buyers. I'm for the first home buyers. I'm for the people who have nothing to give but their time. I'm for the people who work hard. I'm for the people who have a right to have the security of a roof over their head.
Order.
And let me tell you this, the more they go down this road, the more aces we will serve up.
Order. The House comes to order. The member for Spence. The House will come to order. Order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Bass.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. How is the Albanese Labor government helping more Australians build a future where their dream of home ownership can be achieved? Are there any risks to this work?
Great question. Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker. What a great question from the member for Bass, Speaker. And as we come into the end of question time for today, what a stark contrast this draws from the question that was just asked by those opposite, Speaker. A hard-working local member who comes into this parliament week after week to advocate for her constituents, and especially those who aspire to their own home, Speaker, because her community, as mine, understands that there is no greater aspiration in this country than owning the home that you live in. This is a place you build your future. It's where your family can thrive, and that's exactly what Labor's Homes for Australia plan is delivering. Speaker, I want to tell you about Christy and her beautiful family from Tasmania. Before buying their home through Labor's 5% deposit scheme, they were living in an isolated area outside Campbelltown. When they found out they were eligible for this program, Christy said they were over the moon. They've been able to get into their own home. Now they're living much closer to town. Their 10-year-old son no longer has a long bus ride to school. He gets to ride his bike instead. Speaker, they live around the corner from the skate park, and Christy says owning her own home has brought their family even closer together. Speaker, now this beautiful family is planning renovations and they're making this home truly their own. Speaker, this is what home ownership is about for Australians. It's not just about buying a house. This is about security, it's about opportunity, and it's about giving your kids the future that they deserve. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about alternatives, and the three right-wing parties, the Liberals, the Nationals and One Nation, they have opposed every measure that our government has put in place to support first home buyers, Speaker. And I wonder what those opposite would say to Christy and her family, who in all likelihood would still be renting if it were up to those opposite. Would they tell that family just to be happy, stuck in lifelong renting outside of town? Would they tell her 10-year-old son that it's better for him to be taking that long bus ride than riding his bike to school, because these are the kind of consequences that their policies lead us to? Speaker, remember, those opposite have opposed the expansion of the 5% deposit program, something that's got 260,000 Australians into a home of their own. They want to scrap Help to Buy, which helps 10,000 people a year into their own home, and they want to double down on taxing every person in this country to subsidise investors to outbid first home owners in every auction in this country, Speaker. Now, as we come to the end of the budget sitting, Speaker, this is becoming abundantly clear. We have a party over here, the last people left in our country, who cannot see our broken housing system, cannot see the pain this is causing, and continue to defend the status quo. Speaker, our government wants to realise the aspiration of families like Christie's. That's why we're delivering real change for Australia's first home buyers.
Give the call to the honourable member for Farrer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Veteran Affairs. The minister quoted on Tuesday 1 in 10 veterans may go over the $5,000 cap for allied health services. 1 in 10 is circa 30,000 veterans. If the minister knows that the 30,000 of our most injured veterans will be subject to the stress of reapplying for more assistance, why not do the right thing now and carve them out of the cap, $5,000 cap, immediately?
Call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the member for the question. Clearly, as we've articulated, the purpose of the cap is to replace the current existing treatment cycle system where veterans are going back time and time again after every 12 referrals to a GP in order to access allied health services. We're replacing that with the $5,000 allocation, which means around 9 in 10 now won't be going over that allocation, won't be having to continue to go back to GPs. For the 1 in 10, what we're trying to do here is engage properly with those veterans to make sure that they're getting the right level of health care to meet their allied health needs, but also where there are other needs that they may need to provide them with the best overall wellbeing outcome, whilst maintaining the integrity in the system. The proposal you're making would make the entire system a nullity, which is not what we want to do, because we're actually trying to provide better outcomes for our veterans overall, in terms of overall well-being. And another key part of this, what we're doing here with these changes, is in making the biggest increase in fees that are paid to allied health professionals in 2 decades. Because we've heard from the veterans, we've heard from the allied health professionals that if we don't pay them more, they won't be servicing our veterans, and we can't allow that to happen. We want to improve the access for our veteran community to allied health services, and that's what these policy changes will be delivering. Thanks.
Give a call to the honourable member for Gorton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change? What is standing in the way?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, as we wind up the budget session here, I thank the member for Gorton for her question. And this is a budget that delivers real change for Australians. We don't defend a status quo that doesn't work for people, nor do we pretend that the answer is to tear it all down and walk away. We do the hard work of building Australia up. We choose progress over protest. We choose action over anger. We choose outcomes over outrage. We choose real change to make a real difference for Australians. Not just identifying issues, but taking real action. Not simply occupying the space or just passing the time, but making a positive difference, delivering change that people can see and that they can feel. And that is why, just this week, the increase in the minimum wage, the decrease in taxes, the support for paid parental leave, the super paid every payday, all of these changes making a positive difference to people's lives. And whilst Australians can rely upon the Labor Party to deliver real change, they know that the 3 right-wing parties, the axis of grievance over there, will oppose all of the positive measures. We want higher wages. They actually argue for lower wages as a key part of the economic architecture. We want lower taxes. They go to elections arguing for higher taxes for every working Australian. We want more first home buyers. We saw through the last question who they want to represent and who they want to defend. That's their priority. We back Australian aspiration. They undermine it. The 3 right-wing parties just offer grievance and division, nothing more. Labor backs every single Australian and backs their aspiration because Labor is the party of aspiration. Aspiration for all, not just for some. And we're a party absolutely committed, each and every day we're in office, to delivering real change. And on that note, Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.